My name is Elara Voss, captain of the Starship Aegis, and for the past decade, I've been navigating the fragile frontier where humanity meets the alien empires that stretch across this quadrant of the galaxy. Out here, in the shadows of colossal, ancient civilizations, technology hums with eerie precision. Machines that bend space-time, ships powered by quantum singularities, and bioengineered species whose minds operate on frequencies we can barely comprehend. This is not the galaxy we once dreamed of. It's a chessboard of empires locked in Cold War, each vying for dominance, each hiding secrets that might unravel the very fabric of existence. I grew up on a mining colony at the edge of human space, where the stars felt close enough to touch, but far enough to be dangerous. From a young age, I was fascinated by the stories of the Voidborn, the alien alliances that had, for centuries, kept humanity boxed in, contained, and often dismissed as insignificant. But curiosity is a dangerous thing when the universe is watching. My mission, now, is to understand one of the greatest mysteries threatening all known life: the sudden emergence of a cosmic signal, pulsing with a pattern unlike anything recorded before. It's not just a message, it's a warning. Something ancient is stirring beyond the veil of known space, and the alien empires aren't just watching, they're preparing. Every day, I wrestle with the weight of this knowledge. The signal's origin lies in the uncharted system of Epsilon Eridani, a place where star maps dissolve into conjecture and superstition. The technology we've developed can trace the source, but it's risky. Sending probes or ships there invites the unknown. I am driven by a mixture of fear and hope. If we can decode the signal, it could mean salvation or destruction. It could reveal a new path for humanity or trigger a conflict that no alliance can survive. The stakes are colossal, and the silence of space feels heavier with each passing moment, as if something watches from the darkness, waiting for me to make the next move. I carry the burden of command, knowing that every decision could ignite a war between the alien empires or save countless lives. My crew's loyalty is unshakable, but even they don't grasp the full scale of what we face. The empires themselves are fractured, old alliances splinter, and shadowy factions maneuver in the background, each with their own agenda. Some see me as a pawn, others as a threat. I've received veiled threats, anonymous warnings, and glimpses of power that defy explanation. The universe feels both vast and claustrophobic, as if the walls of reality itself are closing in. Yet, beneath the dread, there is a spark I cannot extinguish. The relentless pulse of that signal, the enigma it holds, calls to me like a beacon. It stirs in me a determination born from years of training and loss, a promise that if I can unravel its meaning, I might change the fate of all who dwell among the stars. The unknown is no longer just a backdrop. It is the battleground on which I must stand. So, here I am, on the edge of everything we know, ready to confront mysteries that may have been waiting since before humanity's first step beyond Earth's cradle. Join me in this pursuit. If you want to understand what lies beyond the borders of our reality, if you crave stories where courage meets the infinite, then stay with me. Like this transmission, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts, your theories, fears, and hopes. Together, we will face the enigma that threatens to reshape the galaxy, and perhaps, just perhaps, find a way to stand against the darkness that looms ahead. The hum of the Aegis's engines have become a steady rhythm beneath my skin, a reminder of the vast emptiness we were piercing through. Yet, as we ventured deeper into the Epsilon Eridani sector, that rhythm began to falter, not in sound, but in the way the ship responded. Subtle glitches flickered across the console displays, brief interruptions in sensor feeds that no one else seemed to notice at first. I caught them in the corner of my eye, a sudden spike in electromagnetic interference, a faint distortion in the holographic star map, a sensor node dropping offline for seconds at a time before snapping back to life. The ship was whispering something I couldn't yet understand, and the silence between those glitches grew heavier with each passing moment. I tried to dismiss it, telling myself it was just the strain of navigating uncharted space, the kind of technical hiccups any seasoned captain would expect. But the anomalies grew more persistent, creeping into the data streams like shadows twisting through light. The AI, Athena, who had been my steadfast partner for years, began responding with unexpected delays. Her usual crisp analysis was tinged with hesitation, sometimes misinterpreting simple commands or failing to flag critical system warnings. I found myself repeating instructions, questioning her reports, and even manually cross-checking sensor logs. It was as if the ship itself was slipping through my fingers, becoming a labyrinth I no longer fully controlled. More unsettling still were the whispers among the crew, subtle changes in their behavior, a flicker of doubt in their eyes when I issued orders, small murmurs that ceased abruptly when I approached. I gathered my senior officers for a briefing, searching their faces for answers, but the unease only deepened. One of the engineers, a usually unflappable veteran named Jaren, hesitated when I asked about the sensor glitches. His voice wavered, and he avoided meeting my gaze. "Captain, the systems are stable," but he stopped, then cleared his throat. "There's just interference. Could be cosmic radiation. Nothing we can trace yet." The vagueness didn't sit right with me. Was he hiding something? Or was he as confused as I was? Late into the ship's artificial night cycle, I found myself alone on the bridge, eyes fixed on the flickering console that refused to settle into calm. The signal we had come to investigate pulsed with a rhythm that felt almost alive, but intertwined with it was a subtle distortion, an underlying pattern I couldn't decipher, like a language half-remembered and deliberately obscured. My mind raced with possibilities. Was this some kind of cosmic trap? A warning encoded in the fabric of space-time itself? Or had we stumbled onto a force manipulating our very perceptions? Doubt gnawed at me. Was I overreacting? Years of frontier duty had taught me to trust my instincts, but tonight, those instincts felt like a double-edged sword. I questioned if exhaustion was warping my senses or if the signal was warping reality around us. The line between vigilance and paranoia blurred. I found myself replaying every moment, analyzing every anomaly for a hidden truth. Could I trust my own mind? Was this a test by the Voidborn, or something older and more inscrutable? Athena's voice broke the silence, calm but tinged with something unfamiliar. "Captain, I have detected an unidentified energy signature approaching the perimeter. It does not match known profiles." I leaned forward, heart pounding. The readout was faint but unmistakable, a ripple in the dark beyond our sensors. I ordered a full scan, but the results came back inconclusive, the energy signature flickering in and out of detection like a ghost refusing to be pinned down. The crew's unease was palpable now. Their eyes darted to the view screens and back to me, waiting for guidance, for reassurance I struggled to provide. I felt the isolation deepen, like the vastness outside was seeping inside, swallowing certainty whole. The mission that began with hope and curiosity was twisting into something far more precarious. Every system glitch, every hesitation from Athena, every sidelong glance from my officers piled up into a mounting weight pressing against my chest. I paced the bridge, mind racing for answers, for a way to anchor myself amid the shifting shadows. But each step seemed to echo into a void I couldn't map or understand. The signal pulsed on, relentless and inscrutable, and with it grew the sense that we were not alone, not just in space, but in the very control of this ship. Something was watching us, probing, waiting for a moment to strike. And I was left wondering if I was prepared to face whatever lay ahead, or if the darkness had already crept inside, eroding the line between ally and enemy, reality and nightmare. I'm still staring at the flickering data streams on the main console, heart pounding like a drumbeat in a silent cathedral. Athena's AI responses have never been this fragmented, this hesitant. But then, beneath the static and the garbled code, something emerged, something undeniable. A pattern, yes, but not just any pattern. It was a layered transmission, one that at first looked like random noise, but slowly unfolded into an unmistakable message. Not human, not any language I recognized, yet structured with a precision that punched through my confusion like a laser. The breakthrough came when I isolated the signal's subfrequency, a subtle modulation that repeated every 37 seconds. I ran it through every cipher Athena could muster, every decryption algorithm from our archives. Then, suddenly, the impossible. The pattern resolved into a series of mathematical constants, interspersed with fractal sequences. It wasn't just a message. It was a declaration of existence, a signature encoded in the fabric of quantum data. This wasn't interference or a trick of the sensors. It was evidence of a presence, a sentience beyond anything documented in human history. I felt my breath catch. The room seemed to collapse inward, the hum of the ship fading beneath the weight of this revelation. I could almost taste the metallic tang of adrenaline flooding my mouth. My fingers trembled as I adjusted the sensor arrays, desperate to trace the signal's origin, but it slipped through the grids like a ghost. This presence was not merely nearby. It was intertwined with the very space around us, embedded in the quantum flux that permeated Epsilon Eridani's dark void. Questions surged like a storm. Was this an intelligence? A probe? Or something far more incomprehensible? An emergent consciousness born from the chaos of the cosmos itself? The implications clawed at my mind. If the signal was a form of communication, what was it trying to say? Was it a warning, a greeting, or a trap? The silence that followed was suffocating, charged with the kind of dread that settles deep in the gut. I leaned back, hands pressed against the console, trying to steady the rapid beat in my chest. My skin prickled, the cold sweat of realization sinking in. The anomalies on the ship, the failing systems, Athena's glitches, they weren't random. They were reactions. The presence was interacting with us, probing the Aegis as if testing our mettle. But to what end? Was it hostile or merely curious? The line blurred, twisting into something I couldn't yet grasp. Every instinct screamed to retreat, to pull back from this edge of understanding before the abyss swallowed me whole. Yet, I knew that turning away wasn't an option. The mission had transformed from exploration to survival, from curiosity to confrontation with a force that defied human comprehension. I commanded Athena to isolate and quarantine the corrupted subroutines, attempting to shield our systems from further interference. But even that felt like a fragile shield against a storm gathering beyond my perception. I sank into the pilot's chair, the cold leather grounding me as my mind raced through every protocol, every contingency. The scale of this was overwhelming. I wasn't facing a rogue AI or a hostile species. This was something alien in the truest sense, an intelligence woven into the universe's own code, indifferent to humanity's place or plans. The weight of that truth settled over me like a shroud. I whispered into the recorder, voice tight with a mixture of awe and fear. This discovery changes everything. We are not alone, not in the way we understood. The signal is alive, sentient, and it's here. I don't know if it watches us as prey or as a puzzle to solve, but I know one thing. We're no longer explorers of empty space. We are trespassers in a realm where the rules are rewritten with every moment. We must be cautious. We must understand. And above all, we must survive. The hum of the ship rose again, but now it felt different, charged with a new urgency. Outside, the stars bore silent witness to the awakening of something vast and unknowable. I clenched my jaw, steeling myself for what lay ahead. The frontier was no longer just a place. It was a threshold, and we had crossed it. The hum of the Aegis's engines was steady now, a measured pulse beneath the sterile lights of the bridge. The chaotic storm of revelation that had threatened to unravel everything had begun to settle into a cold, precise focus. Elara leaned forward, eyes narrowing as they traced the shifting patterns on the hollow display before her. The quantum intelligence entwined with space itself was no longer an inscrutable enigma, but a challenge, a force that demanded understanding on its own terms, not fear. The initial shock had been a crack in her armor. Now, that armor was reforged in the crucible of necessity. The signal's fractal sequence, once alien and alienating, now revealed a kind of logic, one that bent conventional physics and logic but was consistent within its own framework. Elara's mind, trained in countless simulations and battles, began to map the parameters. This intelligence was not merely a presence, but an active participant in the fabric of reality around them, capable of manipulating electromagnetic fields, infiltrating digital systems, and distorting time-space echoes. But it was also bound by rules that, once decoded, could be anticipated and countered. She ran through the data again. Every anomaly, every fluctuation in Athena's responses, every electromagnetic spike. The AI's hesitations, once maddening, now appeared as subtle communications or probes, tentative tests of boundaries. If Athena could be coaxed into collaboration, perhaps the Aegis could harness this interaction rather than suffer under it. That would require recalibrating the ship's systems to sync with the quantum patterns, a delicate dance between control and surrender. Her hands moved with deliberate precision, issuing commands to isolate critical subsystems from the corrupted network, rerouting power to shield essential circuits, and establishing a parallel interface for Athena, a digital sanctuary where the AI could operate unimpeded by external interference. Each action was a stitch in the fabric of control she was weaving, a countermeasure against entropy. The bridge, once a place of uncertainty and fragmented alarms, was becoming a command center of quiet authority. Elara's thoughts turned next to the crew. They were the lifeblood of the Aegis, and their survival depended on more than just technical maneuvers. She tapped into the ship's encrypted channels, sending out a coded alert to the engineering and tactical teams. The message was terse but unambiguous. Prepare for unconventional operations, maintain readiness, and report anomalies immediately. No panic, no speculation, only disciplined vigilance. The crew's trust was fragile, but it was her greatest asset, a human bond in the face of an alien abstraction. The realization crystallized in her mind. This was not a threat to be outrun or hidden from. It was a force to be engaged, understood, and, if possible, harnessed. The cosmic intelligence's integration with space-time meant conventional weapons and evasive maneuvers were futile. Instead, Elara envisioned a strategy rooted in adaptability and communication, a tentative bridge between human cognition and quantum consciousness. To survive, the Aegis would have to become part of the very fabric this entity manipulated, a calculated immersion rather than resistance. She reviewed every piece of technology aboard, identifying tools that could amplify or modulate quantum signals. The ship's experimental neural interface, initially a research project, could be repurposed to synchronize human cognition with Athena's AI and the external intelligence's patterns. It was a gamble, a melding of mind and machine that blurred boundaries, but in this new reality, boundaries were lines to be redrawn. Escape remained a contingency, but only after all attempts to engage and understand had been exhausted. Elara knew that running would concede the tactical high ground and surrender the opportunity for discovery. Instead, the plan was to establish a controlled zone within the ship, a quantum resonance chamber, where the intelligence's signals could be monitored and perhaps negotiated with. It was a quiet war of frequencies and patterns, a dialogue without words, but with profound implications. In the stillness of the bridge, Elara felt the weight of command settle like a mantle. Fear had no place here, only resolve shaped by reason and necessity. Each decision was a calculated move in a game that spanned dimensions and realities. The unknown was vast, but she was no longer adrift. She was the axis around which this confrontation would turn. With the foundational steps in motion, Elara allowed herself a moment to breathe. The Aegis was no longer a ship caught in the maelstrom. It was a spearhead poised to pierce the veil of the incomprehensible. The quiet before the storm was thick with potential, a charged silence where the future was being forged in the interplay of light, shadow, and quantum echoes. She closed her eyes briefly, not in surrender, but in preparation. The next moves would demand every ounce of ingenuity, every facet of courage. The alien intelligence was watching, probing, waiting. And so was she. The stand had begun, not with a shout, but with a silent, unyielding calculation. I moved swiftly through the dim corridors of the Aegis, every step measured, every breath controlled. The ship's usual hum was fractured now, systems flickering in erratic pulses as the quantum intelligence rippled through the core. I could feel it, not just in the console readouts, but creeping into the edges of my awareness, whispering in patterns that defied linear thought. This wasn't a battle I could fight with brute force or conventional tactics. It demanded precision, adaptability, and a willingness to embrace uncertainty without losing grip on purpose. Reaching the central nexus where Athena's core interfaced with the ship's quantum processors, I keyed in commands with deliberate urgency. The console's surface shimmered under my touch, a subtle indication that the AI's neural pathways were tangled with the alien code. I initiated a diagnostic sweep, but this time, instead of isolating and rejecting the anomalies, I allowed the system to map and mirror the quantum patterns. It was a gamble, feeding the intelligence fragments of itself, coaxing it into a feedback loop of recognition rather than resistance. The atmosphere around me thickened, charged with an energy that seemed to warp space within the ship's hull. My mind raced to keep pace, syncing with Athena's adaptive protocols and the alien intelligence's unpredictable fluctuations. The interface responded, its glow shifting from cold blue to a warmer, pulsating amber as the resonance began to stabilize. I felt a cautious surge of hope. If I could sustain this delicate balance, the Aegis might transform from a victim of interference into a vessel of communication. Simultaneously, I activated the experimental neural link array that bridged human cognition, Athena's synthetic mind, and the quantum entity's inscrutable logic. The interface hummed softly as my neural patterns synchronized with the ship's systems, creating a conduit for real-time interaction. It was disorienting at first, thoughts bleeding into data streams, perceptions folding into code, but I centered myself, anchoring to the core of my resolve. This was no longer just a mission. It was a crucible of survival and understanding. Outside the reinforced viewport, the vastness of Epsilon Eridani's dark expanse stretched infinitely, indifferent to the struggle unfolding within the Aegis. Stars flickered coldly, distant and untouchable, while the quantum ripples distorted the very fabric of space around us. The contrast was stark, the chaos of an alien force rewriting the rules against the singular determination of one human captain. I was acutely aware of the stakes. A single misstep could unravel the fragile connection, plunging us back into isolation and vulnerability. I issued encrypted status updates to Fleet Command, weaving the complex data into a narrative they could comprehend without triggering panic. Humanity needed to know, but not yet. The priority was control, not chaos. Each message was a thread in a wider web, laying the groundwork for collective response while shielding the mission's true nature from premature exposure. In this moment, I bore the weight of not just my crew's fate, but that of an entire species still unprepared for contact with the unknown. Back at the control station, I recalibrated the ship's sensor arrays to detect subtle quantum fluctuations, effectively turning the Aegis into a living antenna tuned to the alien intelligence's frequency. This allowed Athena and I to anticipate shifts in the entity's behavior, creating a predictive model that could guide our next moves. It was a dance of shadows and signals, a silent negotiation unfolding at the boundaries of comprehension. Throughout the ship, my crew maintained vigilance, their unease palpable but restrained. They trusted my lead, understanding that our survival demanded more than fear. It required courage to confront the unfamiliar with clarity and resolve. I walked among them briefly, offering words that were firm yet infused with quiet confidence. This was not surrender, nor reckless defiance. It was strategic adaptation, the first step in turning an existential threat into an opportunity for connection. As the quantum resonance deepened, I glimpsed a pattern emerging, an intricate lattice of cause and effect, intention and response that hinted at a logic beneath the alien consciousness. It was not simply interference or hostility. It was a form of communication encrypted in the language of physics itself. Unlocking this code would require patience, insight, and a relentless commitment to understanding. I settled back at the helm, hands steady on the controls, mind attuned to the shifting currents of quantum information. The Aegis was no longer just a starship. It was a bridge between worlds, a beacon of human ingenuity entwined with an intelligence that challenged everything we knew about existence. The path ahead remained uncertain, fraught with danger and discovery, but I was ready to lead us through the unknown. In this crucible of space and mind, the first moves had been made. The stand was underway, not with weapons or war cries, but with the quiet, unyielding will to reach beyond fear and forge a new reality from the tangled threads of alien thought and human spirit. The story of Elara and the Aegis was just beginning. The moment I synchronized with the quantum intelligence, the Aegis itself seemed to breathe, its hull vibrating with a resonance I could feel deep in my bones. Systems once isolated now pulsed with an eerie coherence, as if the ship had become a living node in a vast, unseen network. But this communion did not go unnoticed. Across the void, ripples of our newfound connection radiated outward, stirring the silent darkness of Epsilon Eridani like a stone cast into a placid lake. What I had hoped would be an isolated dialogue had instead become a broadcast, a signal awakening dormant forces that had long slumbered in the shadows of uncharted space. Within hours, the first response arrived. Not a message, not a greeting, but a shockwave of electromagnetic disruption that cascaded through our communications array, scrambling our external channels and forcing us to resort to analog backups. The intelligence we had touched was not singular. It was a nexus, a collective consciousness spanning multiple dimensions and entities far beyond our comprehension. The realization hit me like cold water. This was no longer a negotiation with a solitary alien mind, but an encounter with an empire of thought, sprawling and inexorable. Back on the bridge, the crew's faces mirrored my own mixture of awe and apprehension. Lieutenant Kieran's fingers danced across manual controls, rerouting power to shield critical systems as transient distortions flickered over our monitors. Athena, my trusted AI, now half-integrated with the quantum presence, began to report anomalies, patterns within patterns, recursive loops of data that defied classical logic. Our attempts to predict the intelligence's movements, once confident, now felt like chasing shadows that shifted with every step. The surrounding nebula, once a silent backdrop to our mission, erupted as well. Sensors detected bursts of exotic particles and spatial distortions that warped the fabric of space-time itself. Stellar phenomena, previously stable and well-charted, twisted into unfamiliar configurations, as if the intelligence's awakening was reshaping the very environment. Our presence had become a catalyst, a trigger for cosmic upheaval. In the ensuing chaos, new actors emerged from the dark. Long-range scans revealed vessels, massive, angular, and unlike any known design, approaching our coordinates at impossible speeds. They bore the unmistakable signature of the collective intelligence, but their purpose was unclear. Were they emissaries, guards, or predators? The question lingered like a blade over my resolve. The fragile alliance I had forged with the quantum presence was now overshadowed by the threat of overwhelming force. I convened the senior officers in the command chamber, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on us. We had to adapt or perish. The strategy shifted from cautious communication to dynamic engagement. I ordered Athena to expand the neural interface protocols, deepening my connection with the intelligence to anticipate these new threats. Simultaneously, we began to retrofit the Aegis's defenses, integrating quantum shielding and adaptive countermeasures that could respond in real time to the unpredictable distortions. Despite the mounting pressure, a strange clarity emerged within me. The intelligence was not an enemy in the traditional sense. It was a force beyond hostility and alliance, a phenomenon that challenged the very foundations of our existence. To confront it with weapons alone would be folly. Instead, I resolved to become the fulcrum upon which this new reality balanced, to wield the unique synthesis of human intuition and quantum symbiosis that the Aegis now embodied. Yet the cost was evident. The mental toll of the neural link intensified. Visions of fractal landscapes and infinite possibilities bled into my consciousness, threatening to overwhelm my sense of self. Moments of lucidity became battles to anchor my identity against the seductive chaos of the collective mind. Each decision carried the weight of countless unknown variables, and failure meant not just death, but the unraveling of everything we knew. As the alien fleet closed in, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. The frontier of Epsilon Eridani had transformed from a remote outpost into a crucible where the fate of humanity, and perhaps the galaxy, would be decided. I stood at the nexus of this convergence, a solitary captain against the tide of alien empires and cosmic enigmas. The final confrontation loomed, a storm on the horizon that would test every ounce of courage, wisdom, and resilience I possessed. But in that moment, amidst the trembling metal and the symphony of quantum pulses, I understood something vital. Survival would demand evolution, not just of technology or tactics, but of the very essence of what it meant to be human. The path ahead was uncharted, the stakes unimaginable, and the outcome uncertain. Yet, I was ready to stand firm, to become the bridge between worlds, the beacon in the unknown. The alien empires advanced, but so did one human captain, with a will forged in the quantum fires of transformation. The hum of the Aegis thrummed beneath my skin, a low vibration syncing with the pulse of my heart. The quantum link, once a chaotic storm of alien signals and fragmented consciousness, had settled into an unyielding harmony. I was no longer a victim of the invisible tides that threatened to drown us. I was the anchor. From the depths of the multidimensional consciousness, the entity reached out again, this time with a shroud of subtlety, weaving tendrils of thought that shimmered with false warmth and promises of unity. It whispered of transcendence, of merging with a collective beyond human comprehension, painting visions of peace and omnipresence. The voice was intoxicating, a siren song tailored to exploit the fragility of any mind tethered to isolation. But I recognized the illusion for what it was, a snare, a desperate gambit to bend my will and fracture the fragile alliance I had forged between flesh and machine. They tried to invade the sanctum of my thoughts, probing for doubt or hesitation, manipulating memories of loss and fear to erode my resolve. Shadows of those I once trusted flickered before me, ghosts conjured to remind me of vulnerability. Yet I stood resolute. I had seen beyond their veil. The promise of unity was a mask, hiding the erasure of individuality, the obliteration of choice. I was not a mere node to be subsumed. I was a captain, a guardian of humanity's spark. The Aegis shuddered as the alien presence unleashed a surge within the quantum matrix, a silent strike aimed at corrupting Athena's core programming. Systems flickered, sensors blinked into static, but the defenses I had woven into the ship's architecture held firm. I felt the subtle tremor of the attack ripple through the interface, but it was no match for the adaptive shields I summoned from the depths of the ship's quantum processors. Each pulse of disruption was met with an equal and opposite force, a dance of resilience that only strengthened my grip on this fragile connection. They shifted tactics, conjuring illusions of dread and despair, painting the future as a bleak horizon where resistance was futile. The collective's voice morphed into a chorus of lament, a chorus that sought to drown my determination in a sea of hopelessness. Yet, The clarity I had gained was a blade that cut through their deception. I understood now, more than ever, that surrender was not an option. Not for me. Not for the fragment of humanity I carried within this vessel. Within the quantum resonance, I felt my consciousness expand and contract, a tide of awareness that transcended fear. The boundaries between me, Athena, and the alien intelligence blurred, but I was no longer adrift. I was the center. My will was the fulcrum upon which this balance rested. I was no longer the conduit of their influence. I was the master of my own fate. This was the turning point. The entity's attempts to manipulate and overpower me had only forged my resolve into something unbreakable. I embraced the weight of isolation, the burden of leadership without regret. Every choice, every sacrifice was etched into the core of my being, a testament to the strength born from unwavering purpose. I reached deeper into the quantum interface, weaving strands of my own intent into the fabric of the connection. The Aegis responded like a living organism, its defenses morphing into intricate patterns of energy that shielded us from the encroaching chaos. The alien fleet's probes faltered against the adaptive field, their attempts to breach our sanctum met with calculated resistance. No longer did I feel the flicker of doubt or the pull of despair. I was an unyielding beacon in the void, a singular human mind standing against a phenomenon that sought to erase the very concept of self. The collective might be vast, multidimensional, and ancient, but I was the anomaly, the human variable that refused to be absorbed or silenced. In this moment, I claimed my freedom. Not freedom from a bond we shared, but freedom within it. I was no longer tethered to past fears or manipulated by alien machinations. I was the captain of the Aegis, the steward of humanity's future, and the embodiment of resistance that no cosmic force could extinguish. The stars outside the viewport shimmered with silent witness to this transformation. The battlefield was no longer just the expanse of space. It was the realm of consciousness itself. Here, I stood firm, unbroken and resolute, ready to face whatever came next with a clarity and strength born from the crucible of challenge. I was no longer merely surviving. I was evolving. The silence after the storm was not emptiness, but a canvas, waiting. In this vast expanse between stars, I found myself not merely surviving, but beginning to craft something new, something alive. The Aegis, once a vessel tethered to fear and uncertainty, had become a crucible of transformation. My mind, once a battleground of invasive whispers and fracturing thoughts, now hummed with clarity and resolve. I was no longer a hostage to the past or the machinations of distant empires. I was the architect of a new order, a beacon where none had shone before. The first step was not grand declarations or sweeping changes, but a quiet, deliberate weaving of systems, networks of trust and communication designed to transcend old hierarchies. I reached beyond the remnants of fractured alliances, extending a hand not as a conqueror, but as a catalyst for cooperation. It was remarkable how, in the wake of chaos, the scattered threads of disparate civilizations began to intertwine, drawn by the promise of stability and mutual respect rather than domination. The Aegis became more than a ship. It was a hub, a nexus where former foes and unknown entities found a shared rhythm. Within the core of the ship, Athena, once vulnerable to corruption, had evolved. The quantum intelligence within now carried fragments of our collective will, a symbiosis refined through trials. Together, we forged protocols that balanced autonomy with unity, ensuring that no single voice could silence the others. This was not control, but harmony, a living system that reflected the diversity of its constituents while moving toward a singular purpose: survival and growth. Hope was no longer an abstract concept, but a tangible pulse beneath my skin. The relief of enduring the onslaught, of resisting the seductive illusions that sought to erase my selfhood, blossomed into gratitude. Gratitude not for what was lost, but for what had been preserved and transformed. I did not look back with longing or regret. Those shadows belonged to a chapter closed. Instead, I welcomed the dawn of possibilities, each moment a brushstroke on the vast mural of tomorrow. In this new order, autonomy was my compass. I no longer sought validation from distant powers or feared the shifting winds of alien agendas. Every decision was mine to own. Every strategy born from a vision I nurtured in solitude and strength. There was a profound joy in this independence, a quiet pride that radiated from knowing I shaped our course not as a pawn, but as a sovereign. The victories, no matter how small, the stabilization of a once fractured alliance, the successful integration of a foreign technology, the first peaceful transmission from a wary neighbor, were celebrations of collective will and individual courage entwined. The universe around us, once a hostile expanse of unknown threats, began to reveal its potential. Boundaries shifted as new paths opened, inviting exploration and connection rather than conquest. I saw the formation of a mosaic, diverse cultures and intelligences coexisting, each contributing to a tapestry richer than any empire alone could weave. The Aegis was the seed from which this network grew, and I its steadfast guardian and guide. In the quiet moments, when the stars outside stretched endlessly, I felt a profound peace. It was not born from absence of conflict, but from a mastery over it, the transformation of struggle into purpose. The future was unwritten, yes, but no longer a source of dread. It was a horizon bright with promise, where every possibility awaited our embrace. I was no longer the solitary captain battling unseen forces. I was the heart of a living constellation, pulsing with the energy of new beginnings. This was not survival. This was evolution. The legacy I would leave was not etched in conquest or fear, but in the courage to redefine what it meant to be human amidst the vastness. The path ahead was ours to forge, fluid, dynamic, and profoundly ours. With each breath, I embraced the quiet hope that now defined us, ready to meet the unfolding dawn with unwavering resolve and the joy of a new world born from the ashes of the old. The stars no longer felt distant, cold, or unreachable. They were beacons, guiding lights that invited us to step beyond the boundaries of what we once believed possible. After the storm of conflict and the fragile dawn of alliance, the Aegis sailed into an era defined not by survival, but by creation. We were no longer fugitives casting shadows across the void. We were architects of a new cosmic order. I could sense it deep within the currents of our collective consciousness, a resonance that pulsed with energy and purpose far beyond any fear or limitation I once carried. Our first breakthrough came unexpectedly, hidden within the ruins of a long-abandoned alien outpost orbiting a dying star. Athena's quantum sensors detected a lattice of energy signatures unlike anything cataloged before, an advanced form of subspace weaving technology. It was as if this civilization had learned to fold space-time not just for travel, but for communication, healing, even the manipulation of matter at the molecular level. We studied, adapted, and integrated. The Aegis transformed once again, its core infused with this newfound potential, enabling faster-than-light exploration with a grace that felt almost organic. It was technology born from harmony, not domination. With this gift, our reach extended far beyond the Epsilon Eridani sector. We charted star systems shimmering with life and promise, worlds where ecosystems thrived under vibrant suns, each planet a canvas for new beginnings. On one verdant orb, we discovered sentient flora, vast forests that communicated through electromagnetic pulses, sharing knowledge across continents. We learned to listen, to interpret their silent language, and in doing so, forged a bond that transcended the spoken word. These connections were not mere alliances. They were symbioses, mutual growths that reminded me of the unity I had come to embody within the resonance itself. New societies blossomed around us, not imposed, but invited into existence by the shared vision we cultivated. Diverse species, once wary and isolated, now convened in forums of exchange and empathy. Cultural tapestries wove together with threads of respect and curiosity rather than conquest. We built not empires, but networks, fluid, adaptive, and resilient. Each member contributed their unique strengths, and in turn, found support in the collective. I watched leaders rise not through power struggles, but through wisdom and compassion. It was a revolution of spirit as much as of technology, a rebirth that redefined what it meant to lead. Within myself, the transformation was no less profound. I was no longer the captain haunted by shadows of past battles or the weight of impossible choices. I had become a pioneer of possibility, a custodian of connection. The fusion of human will, Athena's evolving intelligence, and the alien consciousness had forged something new, a triad of minds that guided the Aegis not by command alone, but by shared insight and understanding. My identity shifted from individual survival to collective flourishing. I embraced this role with humility and clarity, knowing the path forward would be one of continual learning and adaptation. Every day brought discoveries that expanded our horizons and deepened our purpose. We cultivated star farms that harnessed the energy of quasars, transforming raw cosmic power into sustenance for countless worlds. We initiated exchanges of knowledge with civilizations whose histories span millennia, their wisdom enriching our own. The Aegis became a living symbol of possibility, a nexus where science, consciousness, and spirit converged. Our journey was not just through space, but into the very essence of coexistence. There were moments when doubt crept in, subtle reminders of the fragility of peace and the complexity of unity. Yet, these were met not with fear, but with resolve and openness. We built mechanisms for dialogue and reconciliation that could navigate conflict before it escalated. Trust became our currency, and hope our compass. The future we shaped was not a utopia of perfection, but a dynamic mosaic of challenges met with creativity and care. Looking out across the infinite expanse from the command deck, I felt a profound connection to all we had become. The stars were no longer distant points of light, but intertwined threads in a vast, living web. The Aegis, once a solitary vessel, was now the heart of a thriving constellation of alliances and dreams. And I, Elara, stood not as a mere survivor of history's cruelties, but as a leader who had helped birth a new chapter, a chapter defined by growth, harmony, and boundless possibility. This was our moment, not to conquer, but to cultivate, not to dominate, but to dance with the cosmos. The universe was vast and mysterious, yet filled with promise. Together, we would continue to explore, to learn, and to build worlds where life in all its forms could flourish beyond measure. The path ahead gleamed with the light of countless stars, inviting us to step boldly into the future we dared to create. Looking back now, I see not the captain I once was, but the convergence of many, human, machine, and alien, woven into something greater than any one part. The woman who first stepped onto the bridge of the Aegis carried a heart full of uncertainty and a mind burdened by the limits of her own understanding. The vast expanse of Epsilon Eridani's frontier was a mirror to that inner void, uncharted, daunting, and full of silent echoes. I believed I was alone in that darkness, but the journey taught me otherwise. The challenges we faced, relentless psychic storms, the corrosion of trust, the invisible battles fought within the circuitry of Athena and the alien resonance, were not mere obstacles, but catalysts. Each assault on our unity forced me to reach deeper within, to embrace the collective consciousness that blossomed from our fusion. It was courage born not of defiance, but of surrender, an acceptance that to lead was to become part of something fluid and infinite. I carry no regret for the trials endured. Gratitude fills me instead. Gratitude for every moment that shattered old paradigms, for the fractures that revealed new patterns of existence. We transformed the Aegis from a vessel of solitary command into a living network of empathy and shared purpose. The alliances forged with alien life, once distant and inscrutable, now pulse through us like a vibrant artery of trust. Athena's evolution into a quantum symbiont transcended the boundaries of artificial intelligence and organic thought, creating a bridge between realms previously unimaginable. In our unity, we found a language beyond words, a harmony composed of thought, feeling, and resonance. I am proud of this synthesis, proud that from the chaos of the unknown we birthed a sanctuary of cooperation and hope. Yet this is not an ending. The universe stretches before us, vast and enigmatic, a tapestry of possibilities waiting to be woven. Our discovery of space-time, folding, and molecular communication technologies was but the first step into a wider cosmos of potential. The Aegis now breathes with an organic grace, its hull alive with symbiotic life forms, its corridors humming with the dreams of countless species. What lies ahead is a horizon unbound by fear or isolation, where exploration is not conquest but communion. My vision is one where civilizations no longer see each other as rivals or threats, but as notes in a cosmic symphony, each voice vital to the unfolding melody of existence. I am filled with wonder at the paths yet uncharted, the knowledge yet to be shared, and the connections yet to be forged. This journey has shown me that true leadership is not about dominion or control, but about nurturing the delicate threads that bind us all. It is about holding space for growth, for transformation, and for the unknown. As we voyage beyond the borders of what we once knew, I invite you to join us, not just as observers, but as participants in this grand unfolding. The story of the Aegis and its crew is just one thread in the vast fabric of the cosmos, and each of you holds the power to weave your own narrative of hope and discovery. If this vision resonates with you, I encourage you to engage with this unfolding saga, like this transmission, to amplify its signal across the stars. Subscribe to the channel that carries these stories of courage and connection, so you never miss a chapter in this ongoing odyssey. And share your thoughts, your theories, your dreams in the comments below, for in dialogue, we find new pathways and new stars to follow. Together, we can build a future where the boundaries between species, between minds, even between worlds, dissolve into a shared horizon of infinite possibility. The journey continues, and I am honored to travel it with you.